Before we begin, a word of clarity. This channel draws from documented history, published works, and real events. The names, times, and places are factual. But history repeats itself. The faces change, the languages change, the stages change, yet the methods of power remain remarkably the same. If parts of these stories resemble situations today, that resemblance is not intentional. It is the nature of human behavior. Patterns of ambition, deception, and spectacle are constant across centuries. What you will hear is not instruction, it is not moral judgment, it is observation. The purpose is to show how power has operated, how it has been gained, and how it has been lost. Interpretation is yours alone. What you choose to take from it or ignore belongs to you. This is not advice. This is not endorsement. It is history presented for study and reflection.
A man will fight harder for his interests than for his rights. Napoleon Bonaparte. History is filled with wars, revolutions, treaties, and ideas. But beneath them all lies another, less obvious force. The power of spectacle. It is a force so consistent, so universal, that you will find it at every level of civilization, from the emperors of Rome to the pharaohs of Egypt to modern states and corporations today. Why? Because human beings do not respond to logic alone. We may claim to be rational, but our decisions are driven by images, emotions, and collective experiences. When you are part of a crowd, staring at a monumental display, whether it is a coronation, a parade, or even a funeral, you are not thinking critically. You are feeling, and that feeling shapes how you remember, how you obey, and how you believe. This is the foundation of Law 37. Create compelling spectacles. It is not a luxury. It is not decoration. It is one of the central weapons of power. Imagine two rulers. One quietly ascends to power, inherits a title, and begins to govern. On paper, he is legitimate, yet his authority feels distant, almost invisible. Another ruler ascends in a grand ceremony, surrounded by thousands. Trumpets sound, choirs sing, the crown is lifted high. His image is painted, printed, and remembered for generations. The difference is not law, it is not policy, it is not even victory in battle. The difference is spectacle. Spectacle transforms authority into something larger than life. It convinces the mind by overwhelming the senses. People who might argue or hesitate in private find themselves swept into unity when they stand shoulder to shoulder in a crowd. The sheer scale of what they witness makes resistance feel impossible. This is why rulers, religions, and movements have always invested enormous resources in spectacle. From the pyramids of Giza to the Roman Colosseum to the opening ceremonies of modern Olympic Games, the message is the same. Look upon this and know who holds power. Spectacle works because it follows principles deeply wired into human psychology. Scale, size, overwhelms. 1,000 soldiers marching in formation is not just a display of force. It is a demonstration of control, rhythm, and unity. Ritual, repetition, and ceremony create permanence. Crowns, flags, uniforms, parades, all of these tell the mind. This is order, this is authority. Light and sound, from torches and fireworks to church bells and cannons. These elements seize attention, create atmosphere, and command emotion, memory. Words may fade, but images linger. A dramatic gesture or a monumental building endures long after the policies behind them are forgotten. These mechanics are not confined to monarchs and generals. They apply to anyone who seeks influence. Corporations use spectacle when they unveil a new product. Religions use spectacle in their rituals and ceremonies. Even individuals can use it, through clothing, presentation, and timing, to appear larger and more commanding than they truly are. There is a brutal truth behind this law. If you fail to create spectacle, you risk being forgotten. The world is noisy. Voices compete for attention. Movements fight for recognition. Leaders struggle to be seen. Logic, reason, and quiet competence are not enough. Without visibility, your power evaporates. History is merciless to those who remain ordinary. We remember Caesar's triumphs, not the countless Roman governors who managed provinces. We remember great coronations, not the endless faceless transfers of office. To be unseen is to be erased. This law explains why rulers spent fortunes on monuments, why generals staged parades, and why leaders of every era, from emperors to presidents, care so much about appearances. It is not vanity. It is strategy. Every spectacle is an argument written in the language of awe. When Napoleon crowned himself emperor in Notre Dame, the act was theater. But it told all of France and all of Europe that his authority was self-made, undeniable. When Mansa Musa marched across the desert with thousands of attendants and rivers of gold, the sight was so overwhelming that it permanently changed how Europe mapped Africa. When Huang filled his tomb with thousands of life-sized soldiers, it was not merely for the afterlife. It was a message that his power reached beyond death itself. In every case, spectacle was not separate from power. It was power. You might think of spectacle as something for kings and emperors, but it is alive in every corner of the modern world. Political rallies, corporate launches, concerts, sports finals, military parades, they all follow the same principles. Spectacle shapes perception. It dictates who seems powerful, who seems inevitable, and who commands loyalty. This is why Law 37 is not simply about history. It is about how power continues to operate around us. Those who understand it rise. Those who ignore it vanish. In the chapters that follow, we will step into the Cathedral of Light. Not a literal cathedral, but a symbolic one. A place where rulers lit torches of awe, each one casting shadows across centuries. We will study how Napoleon used ritual to rewrite hierarchy, how Mansa Musa turned wealth into legend, how Huang transformed death itself into a theater of fear. And we will look at the principles that still apply to anyone who wants to create influence today. Do not mistake this for theater alone. This is not decoration, nor entertainment. This is the architecture of authority. It is how power becomes visible, how it enters memory, and how it outlives those who wield it. To create spectacle is to claim permanence. To ignore it is to invite erasure. And so, as we begin, ask yourself, when your life is remembered, what will they see? On December 2nd, 1804, the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris was prepared for a ceremony unlike any other. The air inside was thick with incense, music, and anticipation. Outside, the streets were jammed with soldiers, nobles, citizens, and foreign dignitaries. This was more than a coronation. It was a stage, carefully constructed to send a message to all of Europe. Napoleon Bonaparte had risen from obscurity, a Corsican outsider, a soldier who had clawed his way upward through revolution, politics, and war. By law, he was already first consul of France. By power, he was already its ruler. But he understood something deeper. Authority on paper was not enough. Authority had to be seen. It had to be burned into memory. And so he transformed his coronation into a carefully choreographed spectacle. Notre Dame itself was chosen not merely as a church, but as a symbol. The French Revolution had desecrated it, stripping it of its sanctity. By holding the coronation there, Napoleon was not just claiming power, he was restoring sacred grandeur to himself. He bathed his authority in both religious and national meaning. The cathedral glittered with tapestries, golden draperies, and crimson fabrics. Thousands of candles lit up the vaulted ceilings. The sound of choirs filled the cavernous space. For those present, the sensory experience was overwhelming. They were not attending a political event. They were witnessing history. At the heart of the ceremony stood Pope Pius VII. Traditionally, it was the Pope who crowned emperors, placing the crown on their heads as a symbol that their rule flowed from God. Every eye in the cathedral expected the same to happen here. But Napoleon broke with centuries of tradition. As the moment arrived, he seized the crown himself, lifted it high above the assembly, and placed it on his own head. The shock was immense. In one gesture, he declared that his authority came not from the church, nor from God's representative on earth, but from himself. France did not have a king by divine right. It had an emperor who crowned himself. The entire Catholic world was forced to watch in silence as centuries of ritual were rewritten before their eyes. This was not arrogance for its own sake. It was strategy. By crowning himself, Napoleon staged a spectacle that embodied his political philosophy. His rise was self-made, unanswerable, inevitable. He turned a religious ceremony into a political theater of independence and dominance. It is important to understand that this ceremony was never meant only for those inside the cathedral. It was designed for generations. Paintings by Jacques-Louis David immortalized the event in immense canvases, ensuring that anyone who looked upon them would see not the Pope bestowing power, but Napoleon claiming it. In David's most famous depiction, even the act of crowning Josephine as empress was dramatized as a scene of imperial grandeur, carefully staged to echo Roman antiquity. This was spectacle extended beyond the moment. It was reproduced, circulated, and remembered. A single act, multiplied through imagery, became a narrative of power. Why did this coronation matter so much? Why was it more than ceremony, control of ritual? Napoleon understood that rituals are powerful, not because they are repeated, but because they appear eternal. By inserting himself into the ritual, by seizing the crown, he changed the meaning of monarchy in France. The psychology of awe. Those present were not asked to debate his right to rule. They were overwhelmed by sound, sight, and scale. Their reason was drowned by sensation, the politics of image. By commissioning paintings and ensuring wide circulation, Napoleon ensured that his spectacle outlived the day. He did not just crown himself. He crowned himself forever in the collective memory of Europe. Napoleon's coronation demonstrates the essence of Law 37. He did not argue for his legitimacy. He staged it. He created an event so striking that it became undeniable. In one gesture, he communicated more than any speech or decree could. He told France that his power came from no one but himself. He told Europe that the old order of divine right monarchy was finished. And he told history that he would be remembered not as a general nor a consul, but as an emperor of his own making. Consider how fragile Napoleon's authority really was at this moment. He had enemies across Europe. He had skeptics at home. His power rested on victories that could be lost, on alliances that could be broken. But through spectacle, he created the appearance of inevitability. He made himself larger than life, unassailable in the eyes of the people. And this is why spectacle is essential. It gives permanence to what is temporary. It gives solidity to what is fragile. It turns a man into a myth. From one man's crown lifted in defiance, we move to another spectacle, one that did not unfold in a cathedral, but across thousands of miles of desert. Where Napoleon used ritual and image, another ruler used gold and scale. The story of Mansa Musa's pilgrimage would shake the world, not by ceremony, but by overwhelming abundance. In the year 1324, a caravan emerged from the West African empire of Mali. It was not a caravan of merchants or simple travelers. It was a spectacle designed to astonish the world. At its head was Mansa Musa, the emperor of Mali, ruler of one of the wealthiest kingdoms the world had ever seen. His journey was a religious pilgrimage to Mecca, but in truth, it was much more. It was a demonstration of power, wealth, and authority, so overwhelming that its effects rippled across continents for centuries. Mansa Musa inherited a vast empire. Mali controlled critical trade routes across the Sahara and was rich in gold, salt, and resources that Europe and the Islamic world desperately coveted. Yet outside Africa, few truly understood the scale of his wealth. Musa recognized that a ruler's power is not just in possession, it is in perception, and so he turned a religious duty, the Hajj to Mecca, into a stage upon which his empire would reveal its magnificence. The accounts differ in numbers, but the scale is consistent. Tens of thousands of attendants, soldiers, officials, and servants. One Arab chronicler described a procession of 60,000 people. Another noted 12,000 slaves, each carrying bars of gold. There were camels and horses loaded with treasures. Musicians played as they marched. Banners flew. The desert, usually empty and unforgiving, became a moving city of wealth. Imagine the sight. Miles of golden fabric shimmering in the heat. Thousands of people walking in perfect order. Camels bending under the weight of gold dust and ingots. Servants distributing coins and gifts along the way. Wherever the caravan passed, entire towns were swallowed in the spectacle. This was not mere travel. It was theater, and every viewer was part of the audience. Mansa Musa did not hoard his riches. He gave gold freely to the poor, to cities he passed, to merchants, and to rulers. In Cairo, it is said, his generosity was so extravagant that the value of gold collapsed. For years afterward, Egypt's economy struggled to recover from the sudden flood of wealth. Whether every detail is exact or exaggerated, the truth remains. Musa gave so much, and in such public fashion, that his pilgrimage became unforgettable. This was spectacle at its most strategic. By giving openly, he transformed wealth into myth. By spending in front of thousands, he showed that his riches were not temporary. They were inexhaustible. The news of Musa's journey spread far beyond Africa. In an age without printing presses or global communication, word of mouth carried the story like wildfire. Merchants repeated it, scholars recorded it, cartographers began placing Mali on their maps, sometimes exaggerating its size and drawing Musa himself as a king holding a golden nugget. To Europe, Musa became a figure of legend, a reminder that Africa was not just distant and mysterious, but also home to immense power and resources. To the Islamic world, he was a ruler of prestige and piety, tying his empire more closely to the heart of global trade and religion. This is the essence of spectacle. Its reach does not end with the immediate audience. It multiplies through rumor, through story, through image. Long after the caravan was gone, the myth remained. Mansa Musa's pilgrimage was more than wealth displayed. It was spectacle crafted with precision. Scale, tens of thousands moving together, created a vision of order and might. The size itself was power, generosity. Gold distributed freely stunned observers, turning Musa into a living legend of abundance. Surprise. No one expected an African ruler to appear with such wealth. The shock magnified the story. Rumor engine. The spectacle was designed to be repeated by others. In an era where few could travel, tales of Musa's caravan became even more powerful than the sight itself. Mansa Musa teaches us a different side of Law 37. Where Napoleon used ritual and defiance, Musa used wealth and scale. Both understood the same truth. Spectacle is not entertainment. It is strategy. Musa's caravan may have been a religious act, but it was also an announcement to the world. Mali is rich, Mali is strong, and I, Mansa Musa, stand at the center of it. The spectacle did what no treaty or army could. It inserted Mali into the consciousness of the wider world. It immortalized a ruler who, without this act, might have remained obscure outside Africa. Think of the desert, the vast emptiness, stretching endlessly under the sun. Normally it swallows men and caravans without notice, but in 1324 the desert itself became a stage, its sands reflecting the wealth of an empire. This is the true genius of spectacle. It transforms the ordinary into the unforgettable. It ensures that those who witness cannot remain neutral, cannot remain silent. They must tell the story. And so, the lesson endures. If you want your power to be recognized, do not hide it. Stage it. Magnify it. Give the world a sight so extraordinary that it cannot help but remember. From the brilliance of gold in the desert, we move to a spectacle carved not in wealth, but in stone. Where Mansa Musa dazzled the living with abundance, another ruler sought to terrify both the living and the dead. The first emperor of China, Huang, did not simply rule in life. He staged his authority for eternity. In the 3rd century BCE, a ruler emerged who would unify China for the first time. His name was Huang, the first emperor. His reign was marked by both brilliance and brutality. He standardized laws, weights, and measures, built roads and canals, and began the Great Wall. But above all, he understood something timeless. To hold power, one must control not only the present, but also the memory of the future. For Huang, the ultimate spectacle was not a parade in the streets or a festival for the masses. It was his own tomb, a monumental project designed to command awe for eternity. The emperor feared death, but more than that, he feared irrelevance. He believed that his rule must extend beyond the grave, that his authority must not end with his body, and so he ordered the creation of an afterlife empire, a subterranean world guarded by an army of clay. This was not simply a burial. It was theater. It was spectacle staged for eternity. Discovered in 1974 near Xi'an, the Terracotta Army is one of the most extraordinary archaeological finds in history. Thousands of life-sized soldiers, each uniquely crafted with different faces, armor, and weapons, stand in silent formation. Alongside them are chariots, horses, acrobats, and musicians, all sculpted to serve the emperor after death. What makes this army remarkable is not just its size, but its individuality. No two faces are the same. Every soldier seems alive, frozen in mid-march, waiting for a command. This was not mass production. It was artistry fused with authority. Imagine the effect this vision had on the emperor's subjects. They did not see the finished tomb. It remained sealed. But they knew of its construction. They saw thousands of workers laboring for decades, heard rumors of rivers of mercury flowing inside, and whispered of a world beneath the earth where the emperor ruled forever. The spectacle lay not only in the final product, but in the anticipation, the myth, the sheer scale of what was being built. Why would a ruler invest such enormous resources in a tomb? Why not direct all of that labor toward roads, palaces, or armies? The answer lies in the psychology of spectacle, immortality as power. By creating an eternal army, Huang declared that his rule did not end with death. His enemies could kill the man, but not the image. Fear and awe, the tomb was a warning. If this is how much he commands in death, imagine his strength in life. Memory as strategy, monuments ensure remembrance. Long after victories are forgotten, the sight of stone and clay endures. The tomb was not only for the emperor's soul, it was for history itself. The Terracotta Army was more than sculpture. It was a reflection of Huang's entire philosophy of power. He had unified China through force. His army was the instrument of that unity. By recreating it in clay, he symbolized eternal control. He believed in order through scale. Bigger than any predecessor, grander than any rival. The tomb was the ultimate expression of that belief. He understood that fear lasts longer than affection. By leaving behind an empire underground, he ensured that generations would whisper his name with reverence and dread. Centuries passed before the tomb was rediscovered, but its impact on memory proves how spectacle endures. Today, millions travel to Xi'an to stand before those silent soldiers. They do not remember Huang's laws or his taxes or the daily struggles of his reign. They remember the spectacle, the army that never moves, yet never dies. This is the essence of Law 37. Practical policies fade, ceremonies vanish, but spectacle burns itself into the human imagination. The Terracotta Army shows us a different side of spectacle, one that is not performed for the living crowd, but designed to echo through time, scale as permanence. Thousands of statues sent a message of overwhelming force, individual detail. By giving each soldier a face, the spectacle gained realism and humanity, making it unforgettable. Mystery. The tomb remained sealed, feeding rumor and imagination. What is unseen often holds more power than what is displayed. Eternity. By linking himself to the afterlife, Huang claimed more than kingship. He claimed godlike immortality. From Huang, we learn that spectacle does not always need an audience in the moment. Sometimes its power lies in the future. By building something that would outlast him, the first emperor ensured that his authority would echo for centuries. The lesson is clear. If you want your power to endure, Do not rely only on policies, battles, or words. Build images, monuments, and legacies that cannot be erased. Stage a spectacle so vast that even time itself cannot dismantle it. Stand before the Terracotta army today, and you feel the weight of this law. The soldiers are silent, yet they speak. They remind us that power is not measured only in life, but in how one is remembered. Huang mastered the art of spectacle by refusing to let death end his performance. From the torchlit cathedral of Napoleon, to the desert wealth of Mansa Musa, to the subterranean army of Huang, we see the same law expressed in different forms. Spectacle is not entertainment. It is architecture for power. It is ritual, abundance, and eternity. And as we move toward the conclusion, we must ask, how can spectacle be used? And how can it backfire? What happens when the performance becomes larger than the ruler and spectacle turns into a trap? In the world of ancient Rome, power was not truly power until it was displayed. Victories won on distant battlefields meant little if the Roman people did not see them with their own eyes. And so the Romans perfected one of history's most enduring spectacles, the triumph. A triumph was more than a parade. It was the highest honor the Republic, or later the Empire, could grant a victorious general. On the appointed day, the city of Rome transformed itself into a stage. The general, dressed in robes of purple and gold, rode through the streets on a chariot drawn by 4 horses. Behind him marched his soldiers, carrying banners and trophies taken from the enemy. Prisoners of war, often kings or generals themselves, were paraded in chains. Wagons overflowing with treasure clattered through the streets. Gold, silver, art, and exotic animals captured in conquest. Music thundered, crowds roared. The entire city became an audience. Rome itself was reaffirmed as the center of the world. The triumph was not simply celebration, it was propaganda, carefully designed to bind the people to their leaders. Visibility of victory, conquests far from Rome, could feel abstract. The triumph made them real, undeniable. Citizens could see with their own eyes the wealth and captives of foreign lands, unity through awe. For one day, all of Rome shared the same vision. Rich and poor, patrician and plebeian, were united by the overwhelming spectacle, reinforcement of order. The triumph reminded the people that victory belonged not only to the general, but to Rome itself. The general's glory was tied to the state. Even the ritual of humiliation was spectacle. The defeated enemies, once proud rulers, were forced to march as living proof of Roman supremacy. Often they were executed at the end of the procession, power displayed, then destroyed in front of the crowd. Yet the Romans were clever. In the midst of the general's glory, a reminder of mortality was woven into the spectacle. Tradition says that as the victorious general rode his chariot, a slave stood behind him, whispering, "Remember, you are mortal." This reminder did not weaken the display, it strengthened it. By acknowledging mortality, the triumph gained even more weight. It suggested that glory must be seized in the moment, because it cannot last forever. For centuries, triumphs defined Roman power. They immortalized victories and turned generals into legends. Even Julius Caesar, Augustus, and later emperors understood that their legitimacy rested not only on conquests, but on how those conquests were staged in the heart of the capital. without the triumph, Rome's victories might have remained distant, forgettable. With it, they became eternal stories, etched into memory, art, and history itself. The Roman triumph is a reminder that victories mean little if they are invisible. To command loyalty, power must be made tangible, undeniable, overwhelming. Rome's generals knew that spectacle was not decoration. It was the final act of war. A battle ended with swords. A war ended with a triumph. From the streets of Rome, filled with banners, captives, and treasure, we move forward in time to a different kind of spectacle. Not a parade of soldiers, but a construction of illusions on a scale the world had never seen. For when rulers build palaces of endless wonder, entire nations bow to the theater of daily life. We have walked through cathedrals of fire and silk, across deserts glittering with gold, into tombs guarded by armies of clay, and along Roman streets lined with captives and banners. The lesson is clear. Spectacle is not a decoration of power. It is one of its foundations. Policies, speeches, even victories in war, these are fragile. They fade with time. But spectacle endures because it is carved into memory. It bypasses the intellect and lodges itself in the senses. A law may be forgotten, a battle may be misunderstood, but the sight of a crown lifted, of gold scattered, of soldiers in formation, that cannot be erased. Human beings are wired for vision. What we see and hear collectively is far stronger than what we analyze individually. Leaders throughout history have known this. To rule the mind, you must first capture the eye. From every case we've studied, patterns emerge. These are not ancient curiosities. They are principles that still operate today. Scale overwhelms. The Roman triumph did not bring a few soldiers, but thousands. Mansa Musa did not travel with a handful of attendants, but tens of thousands. Size itself convinces. It makes the unreal appear inevitable. Ritual creates permanence. Napoleon's coronation mattered not because of words, but because of ritual, robes, choirs, gestures. Ritual feels eternal, even when it is newly invented. Light and sound hijack emotion. Torches, fireworks, choirs, drums. From the cathedral to the fairground, rulers have used sensory overload to silence skepticism. Generosity as Theatre Musa's gifts of gold were not charity. They were performance. The act of giving publicly became the spectacle itself. Mystery multiplies power. Huang's tomb remained sealed. The unseen army was more powerful in rumor than in sight. Sometimes what is hidden is more commanding than what is revealed. Echo extends the moment. Jacques-Louis David's paintings of Napoleon, maps of Musa, oral legends of Roman triumphs. Spectacle multiplies when it travels. If it cannot be remembered, it is wasted. Spectacle did not end with emperors and kings. It thrives today. Consider the world around you. Politics. Leaders stage rallies not to argue, but to display scale. Crowds, flags, slogans. A single image of mass unity outweighs hours of debate. Corporations, product launches, from automobiles to smartphones, are staged like theater. Lights dim, music swells, curtains rise. The object is revealed as though divine. Nations, the Olympics, world expositions, military parades, these are modern triumphs, designed not just to entertain, but to project power. Social movements, marches, demonstrations, public speeches. Without spectacle, even the most powerful ideas remain whispers. We live in an age where spectacle is no longer occasional. It is constant. Media ensures that every display can be multiplied, shared, replayed. The stage is global, and the audience is everyone. But spectacle is not without danger. What grants awe can also turn to ruin. Excess. When spectacle becomes constant, people grow numb. If every announcement is the greatest ever, none of them are. Backfire. Spectacle that reveals weakness rather than strength destroys authority. A poorly attended rally, a failed performance, a ceremony gone wrong, all undo the effect. Dependency. Leaders who rely only on spectacle risk hollowing out their power. The show can continue even as the substance disappears. Rome's triumphs made generals into legends, but also planted seeds of jealousy, rivalry, and eventual collapse. Napoleon's coronation burned itself into history, but his empire crumbled within a decade. Qin Huang's tomb remains, but his dynasty lasted only 2 generations. Spectacle immortalizes the image, not the reality. So how do you use spectacle wisely? The law teaches us not to reject it, but to master it. Reserve it for key moments. Do not exhaust spectacle on trivial occasions. Save it for coronations, unveilings, victories. Make it rare enough to astonish. Tie it to meaning. Spectacle without purpose is empty. Napoleon tied his to independence. Musa tied his to wealth and faith. Qin tied his to eternity. The meaning amplifies the display. Design for memory, not the moment. The true audience is not only those present, but those who will remember. Paintings, stories, recordings ensure the spectacle lives beyond its day. Balance, all with control. Too much spectacle without restraint invites suspicion. Rome's generals learned this. Some who staged grand triumphs were later seen as threats to the Republic itself. Spectacle is not about luxury. It is about survival. Those who remain invisible are forgotten. Those who remain ordinary are ignored. The rulers, leaders, and visionaries who endure are those who master the stage. History remembers Napoleon lifting his own crown. It remembers Mansa Musa's golden caravan. It remembers Qin Huang's silent army. It remembers the Roman triumphs, not because these were the only rulers of their time, but because they were unforgettable. But you must understand the paradox. Spectacle gives life, but it also demands constant feeding. It can elevate a man into legend, but it can also trap him in his own performance. To live by spectacle is to live on a stage that never ends. This is the weight of Law 37. To ignore spectacle is to disappear. To misuse it is to collapse under its weight. To master it is to hold memory itself in your hands. Spectacle is not theater. It is not entertainment. It is architecture for power. It is the difference between a ruler who rules in silence and one who rules in history. It is the difference between an idea that dies in whispers and one that lives in legend. Use it carefully. Use it deliberately. And remember, in the end, it is not the policy, not the speech, not even the battle that survives. It is the sight, the sound, the spectacle. Like, subscribe, comment, or don't. You are the master of your own life.